Do you bench press? Better question, should you be using the bench press in your training? Hey, I'm Coach Jordan, and I'm here to share with you 3 alternatives to the bench press if it's an exercise you're not confident in, or one you just don't feel is the right exercise for you. The bench press is one of the most heavily debated exercises. In athletics, the question becomes, should overhead athletes who throw or spike or shoot use this as a modality for training, or could it hurt their shoulders? When it comes to everyday moms and dads like you, do I need this exercise to get fitter, to get healthier, to get stronger? Is it really going to help me hold the kids, pick up items, lift things off of shelves? Then, even within those who love bench press, it's heavily debated because what's the right technique? Should you have an arch? Should your feet be firmly planted on the floor, on the bench? Should you be on your toes or your heels? There's a lot of controversy with bench press, which leads to a lot of people feeling uncertain in if this is the right exercise for them and if they're capable of doing it without getting hurt. That's why today I want to give you 3 exercises that are going to help give you the confidence you need to train the right areas and to build up to a bench press if you want to. The bench press is an exercise that targets the chest, the shoulders, and the arms. In choosing alternatives, we need exercises that are going to do the same. So this video covers a band or cable press, traditional push-ups, and a dumbbell bench press. The first exercise is a band or cable press. Which variation you choose is largely going to depend on the equipment you have in your training space. Here at Complete Performance, we aren't fortunate enough to have a cable machine, so we do a lot of band press as an alternative. You may find that at your training location, you don't have bands to utilize, which is why a cable machine works great. I'm going to cover a few different variations if this specific setup doesn't work out for you so that you can still utilize this as an exercise. Let's first start with the setup of the band or cable press. We want to make sure that when we set this height up, it's at the right height. Too often people set it up too low or too high, which can adversely put your shoulders in a pretty difficult pressing position. That's just going to lead to some aches and pains in shoulders, elbows, and wrists later on. So ideally, you put this at about armpit height, just a little bit lower. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab a band on each side and you're gonna loop those bands over the top. Personally, I like over the top, but you can use under. I prefer to go over because I feel in an under position, it pulls a little bit on my thumb, as well as I find it's a little bit harder for me to lock that shoulder into position while I press. So we're gonna go with the band over the top of our arms here. The palms are gonna be down to the floor. The next piece we need to cover is our arm position. Now, we wanna think that we are shoving a bad guy away from ourselves. If I'm going to push someone away, I wanna be in my strongest position. I'm defending myself. I'm strongest when those arms are about here. This, not a lot of strength. This, not a lot of strength. So I'm gonna cut that distance in half, and that's where I'm gonna be strongest to press out. If you're looking for specifics, aim for a 45-degree angle from that side, where this is 90 degrees, this is 0, and this is 45 degrees. That's gonna put me in the strongest pressing position. Now there are some grip variations that you can use to change up your training, alternate the stimuli of your muscles, but let's start with the basics. My palms are down to the floor. My elbows are 45 degrees away from my sides. I'm gonna squeeze those shoulder blades down towards my hips so I lock the shoulder in, and I'm gonna squeeze from my chest to press out. That pulling the shoulder blade down allows me to squeeze and isolate that chest while my shoulder stays in the right position. If you forget to lock those shoulders in, what can happen is we press and then we continue to press forward and rotate those shoulders forward. Now, in that press out, what we want to really think about is squeezing through the chest here, but we also don't want to forget about our back on the way back in. In these pressing motions, it is majority about the press, but we do have to consider our upper body on the way back in. I'm gonna keep that chest engaged, but now I'm gonna think about squeezing through that back as those arms come back in. Oftentimes, people press out really strong and then they kind of let the band or the cable come back in. What I want you to think about is same speed on the way out as on the way back in. Really squeezing through that back on the way in, squeezing through the chest on the press out. Now the last piece we didn't cover was your lower body foot position. You might find that when you use heavier weights, you're gonna need to utilize this split stance. I find it's great for stabilization and isolating that upper body, but at times, we like to put our clients in an even stance. What that does, it forces them to think about that core contraction just a little bit more so that they don't rock forward or backwards as they press. Just different styles to target different areas. If you're strictly looking to keep this chest focused, stay in that split stance. If you're looking for that added core benefit, you're okay with the weight not being as heavy, set up in that squared stance and really engage through that core. As I mentioned, there are quite a few variations of the band or cable press that you can utilize. We used a bilateral press, meaning we used both sides. You could go with a unilateral press, going on both sides. You can vary the tempo, you can vary the resistance, and as I mentioned, you can change the grip to work a few different strength points in your chest and shoulders. The second exercise we want to cover is the traditional push-up. Who doesn't love a good push-up? Push-ups are a great upper body exercise, but they often get groaned or moaned at because they're hard. It's a humbling exercise to push yourself up off of the floor. You really realize how much you weigh at that point. When it comes to push-ups, most people like to go from a top-down position. At Complete Performance, we like to utilize a bottom-up position. Reason being, from that top down, we can't really guarantee that we're gonna be in the best position on the floor. On the floor is where we're weakest. So if we start from that floor, we can set up in our strongest position and guarantee the best press up. Now let's talk about that setup. First comes the hand position. I recently saw on Whiteboard Daily that we want to look at our elbows being at an arrowed position versus a T position. A lot of people like to go really wide with their shoulders, and while you may still be able to push yourself up, we're putting a lot of strain on the shoulder, on the elbow, and on the wrist. So we're gonna tuck those in, and again, think push bad guy away. The floor is the bad guy here. I'm here, I'm trying to press into that floor as hard as I can to get away from it, to defend myself. I'm in that strong pressing position. Now, when I go to press up, I'm gonna think right before I press up, I'm gonna pull those shoulder blades down towards my back pockets, squeezing through that back to lock the shoulders in. That's gonna help me stabilize the shoulder and prevent any rotating through that upper back. Remember, this is a chest and a shoulder exercise. The last piece of advice when it comes to push-ups relates to our lower half. Yes, I just said it as an upper body exercise, but we want to think about squeezing the cheeks, squeezing the core before every press up. So if I'm here, I'm down on that floor getting ready to push up, I'm going to squeeze everything in tight, up and back down. I reset between each one so that I can guarantee I'm in that best position and I can go from there. Doesn't need to be a long reset at the bottom, but it might look like me down, pick the hands up real quick, re-engage, and press up. Now, push-ups, like the band or cable press, can have a number of variations. You can alter the stance of your hands to target different areas of chest and shoulders. You can change your positioning, so you can be in an incline or a decline position. But what I want to talk to you about is variations of push-ups. If pushing up your entire body weight is just a little bit too hard. If a push-up from your toes is something you're not ready for, we want to look at modifying to a push-up from the knee or an incline push-up. When it comes to a push-up from the knee, whatever happens when we get to this knee position, all of a sudden everybody wants to keep those knees, those hips bent. I want you to think full extension of those hips when we're pressed here. Everything stays the same. So I look just like I'm gonna do a push-up from my toes. Only difference is from here, I'm just gonna push up to my knees. So make sure that every time you come back down to the floor, you're all the way settled down to the floor. Now, the incline variation is my preferred way to alternate and to vary a push-up if a toe push-up is not our skill set yet. The reason being, it forces you to engage that core a little bit more. You're also in that same position as you are in a full push-up. And you work that back just a little bit more, which is typically the weaker area of a push-up. So in this incline position, you can use a barbell, a bench, a box, a stair. I'm here, everything stays the same, and I'm pressing up and down. I'm gonna use all of my same cues. I'm gonna make sure my hands are 45 degrees away from the sides. I'm gonna make sure I squeeze my shoulders before I press up, squeeze the core, squeeze the glutes. Only difference, I'm not coming all the way down to the floor, and I might feel it in my core and in my shoulders a little bit more. The last variation we want to cover is a dumbbell bench press. The dumbbell bench press is a precursor to a barbell bench press. It's also just a great training exercise for you to vary, for you to add strength in, and to be a staple of your program. So with the dumbbell bench press, you're gonna have that bench, two dumbbells, you're gonna lie back onto the bench, and you're gonna pull those dumbbells down, squeeze through the chest to press back up. Now, similar to the band press, I want you to think about the in and the out of the motion. So as I'm lying down here, I'm gonna think about squeezing through that back and pulling the dumbbells down, and at the bottom, I'm squeezing through that chest. Almost like a slingshot. I'm loading that slingshot up. It's ready, squeeze and release to press those dumbbells back up. Now, if you want to know some of the common mistakes of a dumbbell bench press, check out the video that I put together on the 3 most common mistakes for dumbbell bench press. But let's talk some basic setup points. Put those feet flat on the floor, grab a dumbbell in each hand, lie back, and when we pull down, same as with every other pressing exercise, we're gonna come down and those elbows are gonna be about 45 degrees. Really similar to the push-up, people like to get in that T position, which is again pretty hard on that shoulder, or they like to get really close to that body, which can be a variation you can utilize in your training, but if we wanna get that most strength through that chest, we're looking to target at that 45-degree angle. If you are looking to utilize the dumbbell bench press, there are plenty of variations that you can utilize. You can do a bilateral, like we did. You can do a unilateral, meaning one-sided. You could change the grip, the tempo. There are so many ways to use the dumbbell bench press. You can get away with doing this without ever using a barbell if you're not comfortable. Go ahead, grab a couple dumbbells, test it out. Be sure to utilize these 3 exercises to build your confidence, to build your skill set, and to build your strength so that whenever you're ready to test out the bench press, all you have to do is ask a spotter, a coach, a friend, somebody who can guide you in the basics of a barbell bench press, and you're ready to give it a shot.